What they're really wary of is leaks, and they're really worried about that. So they are on kind of full lockdown mode in the Treasury. They're kind of bringing what John Healey describes as kind of military levels of compartmentalisation into the process. So only people that need to know.
Let's talk politics now with the Times political editor, Steven Swinford. Morning, Steve.
Good morning.
Should we start with the front page story this morning? Realistic Burnham hints at tax increases in budget. Well, what are you making, I suppose, of the messaging from Burnham? Is he being pragmatic and realistic and trying to tee us all up for tax rises, or is there a risk that this gets away from him 2 months out from the budget?
It's not quite as dark as... we'll all remember when Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer went very dark and they talked about pain to come. We're not hearing that, but what they are saying is it is challenging, it is difficult. And from most of the intelligence I've got, they want this budget to be actually a small budget. They want it to kind of be streamlined, and the cardinal sin of Labour that they are learning from is those first two budgets of Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, which had huge rises in public spending and huge increases in tax, and they could never shake that off afterwards, right, among many cardinal sins. So they don't want this to be a big spend, big tax budget, but what they are pointing to is the circumstances are really challenging. The Iran war is hitting public finances. They've got to find more money for defence. So most people that we are talking to expect some kind of tax rises. It's a question of how big.
Yeah, and I wonder to what extent, Steve, they might be able to offset that between now and then. I'm thinking of Jackdaw and Rosebank, for example, oil and gas fields in the North Sea. And if these were to get the go-ahead in these next couple of months before the budget, they may be able to point to the growth that would be delivered from those sorts of projects, and therefore build in a little bit more headroom.
I think that will be really challenging. They've struggled to score that with the body called the Office for Budget Responsibility, the official forecaster. But look, if you're looking for money, there's a couple of places that you could get it from. The bankers are obviously very concerned about it, and they are raising alarm bells about a potential banking levy. Some of the biggest bankers in the world have been lobbying very hard on that. But then also, we've seen energy companies secure huge profits recently off the back of the Iran war. So there is a world in which you actually get a two-pronged approach. They approve, as we expect next month, Jackdaw. That's going to get the go-ahead. We think it will be in September. But they also could jack up some of the levies on that industry, which is already taxed to an extraordinary degree anyway. But that is possibly one thing they could do.
Yeah, and I suppose underpinning all of this is consistency. So rather than sort of floating something and then running away from it, as perhaps Starmer and Reeves did, actually trying to present options that you see through, that you don't kind of float something that you then want to just take a diversion from.
Exactly. They want to control the narrative this time. So what they're really wary of is leaks, and they're really worried about that. So they are on kind of full lockdown mode in the Treasury. They're kind of bringing what John Healey describes as kind of military levels of compartmentalisation into the process. So only people that need to know. So we'll see how that bears out over time. But look, it is a politically huge moment, October the 28th, and what Andy Burnham does will set the tenor for the rest of his premiership.
The other story you've got on the front page of the Times this morning is about Thames Water, and actually, could we say that this is certainly a change of heart from Andy Burnham on Thames Water? Dare I say a U-turn?
It's not quite a U-turn. They are saying that it's complex. They are saying, so the question that we're looking at is, do you put Thames Water into administration? That's the question on the table, which, Andy Burnham is grappling with, Keir Starmer grappled with. And what they've actually discovered is to do that is hugely expensive. There would be a massive risk of legal challenges, and it's practically very difficult. Now, why that's hard for Andy Burnham is because Andy Burnham put this front and centre of his premiership. During the Makerfield by-election, he actually said he wanted to nationalise Thames Water. He's now watered that back. He's talking about public control, which special administration would certainly be. But even that is really difficult. So what I am hearing is that the whole thing has effectively been shelved to a later date. So they need to do more work to try to work out solutions. But at the moment, they're worried that if they push the button and put it into administration, taxpayers could be on the hook for, £2 billion this year at least. There's the issue of paying creditors. And then there's the bigger issue of who would actually buy the thing if you put it into administration? Who would buy this ailing institution? So lots of very difficult questions with it. And you probably don't want to be answering those questions in the run-up to a big budget.
Yeah, absolutely fair. Steve, great to speak to you this morning. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
That's Steve Swinford, who is the Times political editor. We begin with politics and our political correspondent, Terry Stiastny. Morning, Terry.
Hi, good morning, Calum.
Front page of the Times, John Healey looks like he might be raising taxes in October. Just talk us through what the Times is reporting.
Well, yes, this was Andy Burnham was speaking to reporters on his trip to Ukraine, and he was asked about whether he was going to have John Healey raise taxes at the budget. And Andy Burnham, very carefully did not say that he wouldn't have to raise taxes. He said that he would always take a careful approach to things, that he wouldn't take risks with people's jobs or livelihoods, but also said that we are in a challenging position, and said whatever he did would be carefully thought through, would be funded, but there would be more to come as we go into the autumn. So, the fact that he hasn't explicitly said there will be no tax raises has, of course, led people to speculate that, given the current economic situation, that there might be.
And things are going to get tougher for people. We've got the energy regulator dishing out the latest price cap on energy tomorrow, and so we're heading into an autumn where this cost of living squeeze could get quite real quite quickly. So I wonder how Burnham is going to frame that in the weeks leading up to the budget. Shall we go on to social housing next? We've got the Housing Minister after 7 o'clock this morning to talk to us about where money is being allocated when it comes to building more houses, whether that be councils, housing association, social housing, etc. So just talk us through this one, Terry.
Yes, this is the announcement of the first phase of funding for social housing and affordable housing. So far what the government has said is that they're allocating £10 billion of funding, which will be spent over the next 10 years. That is hoped to provide 70,000 new homes outside London. There will also be an allocation of £6 billion to provide housing within London. About a third of that will be in 6 of the main mayoral areas, so places like Greater Manchester, the West Midlands, Yorkshire, for instance. And of what has been announced so far, the plan is that 60% of the new houses would be for social rent, so effectively council houses, and around 40% of houses would be for affordable rent, so sort of mixture of different types of ownership there. And of course, one of the questions here is how much of this housing is provided by local councils, which is what Andy Burnham had previously said that he would like to do in terms of providing housing, and how much will be through housing associations or other types of affordable homes. And that's one of the questions that the government still has to decide with some of the remaining funding.
Let's go on to the Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch meeting the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in a cafe in Rome yesterday, where she apparently was warned that a deal with Nigel Farage is a bad idea. And she was urged to, quote, be your own woman and stand your ground.
Yes, Kemi Badenoch and Giorgia Meloni seem to have a friendship that goes back quite a few years. So they met in a cafe in Rome when the Conservative leader was there, and they seem to have had quite a wide-ranging conversation. So Giorgia Meloni advised Kemi Badenoch to continue to be herself and stand her ground, but she also warned her about the risks of doing deals with parties further to the right, which is something that Giorgia Meloni has an issue that she's faced herself. They didn't seem to agree so much on the European Convention on Human Rights, because Giorgia Meloni said it needed to be reformed, whereas Kemi Badenoch said she would prefer to leave it. But they did have more in common when it talked about things like Ukraine and the economy, for instance.
And finally, this morning, Terry, the Times reports that an anti-Semitism event has in effect been blocked by the Greens at their party conference. Will there be other anti-Semitism events? I suppose it's a bad look given the kind of buzz around the Greens at the moment.
Yes, I think given some of the kinds of motions that are going to be discussed at the Green Party conference, it does seem, a bit unusual that they would want to block this particular event. So this was an event which is planned to be organised by the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust and the polling company More in Common, who wanted to discuss an event called What Does Getting It Right Look Like for the Green Party in terms of its views on anti-Semitism. And the party didn't want this to be part of the official Fringe programme. The organisers then suggested we could have this, somewhere separately but related and linked to the Fringe programme. And the party said they couldn't come to an agreement with the organisers on how the event could be made more inclusive, in their words. But it is, a bit of a concern for the party that if they are having lots of other discussions and motions on Israel in particular, that they are not so inclined to have one on how to deal with anti-Semitism.
Yeah. Terry, thanks very much indeed. That's political correspondent Terry Stiastny.